The Dark Empath, The Truth. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Many of you know that I am a narcissistic psychopath. That means that I have narcissistic personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder. I've been diagnosed with both. I am, as per my classification, the ultra. This means that I have been afforded a high level of self-awareness, which, when allied with my higher executive function and high level of intelligence, enables me to convey to you, in a way that's easy to understand, how I see the world, how I behave, but also that I'm able to tell you about the way that others of my kind function, operate, and behave, thus giving you understanding and practical solutions as to how you navigate your life with such individuals. I do this as a consequence of the creation and extension of my legacy. Many years ago, when I first started writing and talking about this topic, I had a look at what else information was out there. Much of it was inaccurate, or had sections missing. Indeed, there are certain myths and misunderstandings that are regularly propagated about my kind, which have me shaking my head in disbelief at the idiocy of what is being stated. Accordingly, that offends my sense of control because it's not accurate, and therefore, as part of what I do, I seek to correct these misunderstandings. Many people have asked me about the concept of the Dark Empath. I divide people up for the purposes of this work into four main base categories. Narcissists, narcissistic people, normals, and empaths. In some instances, psychopathy is also relevant to antisocial personality disorder. But given that that is comparatively rare, there is a greater focus on narcissists because there are more of them. Within the group of narcissists, I further divide into schools and cadres. The cadres, essentially the preferences of the narcissist: somatic, cerebral, victim, or elite. Amongst the schools, the main divisions are lesser, mid-range, greater, and ultra, with subdivisions of lesser, mid-range, and greater. This is done so that you recognize the differing types of narcissists and can understand what all of that means. My classification system has proven very useful to many, many people. Amongst the empaths, I divide into school and cadres also. With cadres, there are 5: martyr, magnet, carrier, geezer, and saviour. With regard to the schools, standard, codependent, super, and contagion. You'll notice that I don't have any classification of covert narcissist. There are covert behaviours, but covert narcissist is far too wide and would actually cover all the way from low, mid-range through to and including the ultra as ones that exhibit covert behaviours, but they are with considerable differences. Ditto with regard to grandiose narcissist or vulnerable narcissists. As I've explained in videos of those names, those terms are ultimately unhelpful. Useful to describe the behaviours, but not a classification of narcissist. But what about the Dark Empath? This has been repeatedly mentioned to me, and I have looked at other people's offerings in relation to describing what a Dark Empath is. One description described the Dark Empath as great at showing affection and care, but influenced by manipulation. That is not an empath, dark or otherwise. That is the behaviour of a narcissist. Most narcissists can exhibit affection, some narcissists can exhibit care, and all are influenced, or more accurately, driven by the need to manipulate, whether they're aware of it or not. Thus, to describe a dark empath as great at showing affection and care but influenced by manipulation is wholly incorrect. You are describing a narcissist. The dark empath has also been described in relation to narcissists as stating that narcissists dismiss the emotion of others. Again, another mistake. Narcissists have no emotional empathy, meaning the narcissist is only interested in the emotion of others for the purposes of the prime aims, namely, to control other people, to draw fuel from them, gain character traits from them, and residual benefits. Some narcissists will dismiss the emotional response of other people because it hasn't been generated by them, and reacting to it, for instance showing compassion, would be a burden, and thus the narcissist dismisses it. However, other narcissists will look to harness that emotion, diverting it onto themselves by way of fuel. And others, because they have cognitive empathy, will respond in a seemingly caring way. Therefore, asking the individual who is crying, "Are you all right? Here, let me give you a hug. Is there anything I can do?" The narcissist has learned that those are the appropriate responses when seeing somebody who is manifestly upset. Behaving in that way allows the narcissist to assert control, draw fuel, manage their facade, and therefore to suggest that narcissists dismiss the emotion of others is again incorrect. It was stated in relation to dark empaths that dark empaths can understand the emotion of others, but the dark empath's end goal is to gain power and control, and that's where the dark empath and narcissist connect. You are not describing an empath. That is a narcissist, and possibly a psychopath. Certain narcissists, lesser, struggle to understand the emotions of others because they have neither emotional empathy or cognitive empathy. This is where you will often get the 404 moment, where the narcissist looks at you with a blank look. They can't comprehend what it is that they're witnessing, and they don't know how to respond to it. I have often explained that in effect there is a cherry picker which goes racing away to a warehouse to try and find the appropriate response in that situation. For some narcissists, that cherry picker returns very quickly with an exactly appropriate response, meaning that you think that an individual is just like you, caring, compassionate, and exhibiting emotional empathy. In other instances, there might be a slight delay before you see the narcissist kick into action, but often you have to look carefully for it. That is demonstrative of the fact that what you're getting is not a feeling response, but is an intellectual and considered response. In some instances, the response that you see doesn't actually match the circumstances. So, for instance, the individual may laugh when you're upset. That is where there's been a glitch, and that cherry picker has got the wrong response. Sometimes there is no response at all. The cherry picker goes to a shelf in that imaginary warehouse, and there's nothing there, and therefore returns empty-handed. Thus, the lesser narcissist invariably will not be able to present a response or an appropriate one. But mid-range, greater, and the ultra regularly understand the emotions of others for the purposes of gaining control and power over that individual. This is cognitive empathy. Mid-range narcissists, greater narcissists, and the ultra all have cognitive empathy, the ability to understand the emotions of others, the ability to understand what is the appropriate learned response. When somebody shows pain, the narcissist knows what an appropriate response is. When the narcissist recognizes that a person is crying, the narcissist understands that this means the person is hurting, is upset, has suffered some kind of loss, and therefore is able to elicit an appropriate response. To suggest that this is a dark empath is wholly incorrect. It is not dark empaths who can understand the emotion of others with an end goal of power and control. It is narcissists. It was further stated, a dark empath expresses cognitive empathy as opposed to emotional empathy, to manipulate or to bully, but with the same aim of gaining power and control. That is not an empath. That is a narcissist, either mid-range, greater, or ultra. The insistence on utilizing the term dark empath is entirely misleading. Empaths can manipulate, but they do not do so as a matter of routine. Empaths are guided by emotional empathy. Empaths have an invisible force that guides their behaviour with regard to not acting with a sense of entitlement, demonstrating accountability for their behaviours, recognising boundaries. They don't necessarily have to think about their response, but it is an automatic, instinctive felt response governed by their emotional empathy. This does not lead to them to manipulate. It does not need them to seek power or control. Those are things which narcissists seek. And again, to state a dark empath expresses cognitive empathy as opposed to emotional empathy to manipulate or to bully, but with the same aim of gaining power and control, is describing a narcissist, and only a narcissist. The same video went on to explain that narcissism is a core trait of dark empathy. Accordingly, what they're really saying is they're narcissists. Furthermore, the video stated, all dark empaths are narcissists, but not all narcissists are dark empaths. What they're really saying is there are some narcissists that function with cognitive empathy, and there are some that do not. Accordingly, the use of this term of dark empath causes people to believe that it is an individual that has empathy, but wields it in a particular way to be dark, to be insidious, to perhaps cause problems. It is wholly misleading. There is no such thing as a dark empath. It is the description of a narcissist. The video that I watched, which had been seen by many, describes the behaviours of narcissists. And indeed, in effect, many of the statements that were made actually acknowledge that they are in effect narcissists, but attempt to call them something else by virtue of the fact that they have cognitive empathy. It's simple. Dark empaths don't exist. They are narcissists. Lesser narcissists have no emotional empathy and no cognitive empathy. Mid-range narcissists have no emotional empathy, but they do have cognitive empathy. They are able to understand the emotions of others in order to use that to gain control, which is one of the prime aims. Greater narcissists are even better at exhibiting cognitive empathy for the purpose of understanding other people's emotions to then get control, one of the prime aims. And the ultra is even more successful again. The term dark empath should be deleted. Wherever you see somebody making mention of the dark empath, you should correct them and explain, no, you are describing a mid-range, greater or ultra narcissist. Where you see a video, it would be beneficial for you to link this video in the comment section and explain there's no such thing as a dark empath. For someone to be an empath means they have emotional empathy. They can behave in a way that is unpleasant, where their emotional empathy is eroded as a consequence of an external stressor, such as fatigue, illness, loneliness, financial pressure, difficulties at work, the use of alcohol, the use of drugs, and, most commonly of all, being abused. I regularly explain that empaths are not saints, but there is no such thing as an empath that has emotional empathy, that goes around seeking power and control, that manipulates and bullies through the understanding of emotion. For someone to be an empath means they must have emotional empathy. The description of a dark empath is an individual without emotional empathy and therefore cannot be an empath. The description of the dark empath as having cognitive empathy only is a description of a certain type of narcissist, namely mid-range, greater, or ultra. The truth about the dark empath is this. It does not exist as a separate categorization. It is simply a form of narcissist. And to that end, the term should be removed, not used, because it causes people to think that they are dark empaths because they exhibit empathy, but perhaps behave in a way where they strike back against abuse. That is not being a dark empath. That is being an empath that may have experienced an empathic supernova or a cliff fight back. Watch videos of those names to understand more. It is this kind of error that is irritating because it propagates misunderstanding about empaths and narcissists. It actually dilutes information about narcissism by dressing up the narcissist as something else. A dark empath is simply a narcissist. Make sure you understand this, and others do as well. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.